Y'all probably know this version of the story, but let's just say the Mississippi River drains 41% of continental North America, 31 states and 2 provinces of Canada. Memphis is on the highest piece of ground on the Mississippi River between Cairo and Natchez. There are 4 big bluffs on the eastern bank of the Mississippi River in West Tennessee. 60 miles north is Fort Pillow, 40 miles north is Randolph, 20 miles north Miming Shelby Forest, and then you have this area here, the 4th Chickasaw Bluff. Okay, so 1541, that's bad. Well, 600 AD, an earthquake occurred to kind of form those bluffs then, 600 AD, let's say. And then you go through the Native Americans wandering through here from coming further south. They're using the land for food and hunters and gatherers, let's say. They finally started settling down in this area here to do the farming they could do. And then 1541 is when Hernando de Soto, the first European, came to the Mississippi River looking for the Pacific Ocean and gold, okay? When we get over the high bluff, you'll see if it used to flood 35 miles in that direction, he thought he discovered the Pacific Ocean. And that's one reason why he didn't do it from this spot right here, but that is one reason why this park was formerly named De Soto Park back in 1913. Before that time, it was called Jackson Mounds, you know, and before that time, 1739, there was a French fort in this area, Fort Assumption. The French had come up in 1739 and settled up here, lasted about a month. They didn't like the humidity or the big mosquitoes, okay? That's what I was told. 1795, the Spanish Fort San Fernando, but that was down by the pyramid. We took over that. Spain yielded its rights to east of the Mississippi in 1795, and they moved across the river. We took over their fort down there, but it was in a floodplain, kept on flooding. They kind of laughed at us, you know. So the fort was renamed Fort Pike and then Fort Pickering. That's the name you see in this area here, Fort Pickering. He was like Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of State. And they moved that location up here. And you'll see why when we get over there and see where you have the commanding view of both southbound and northbound from right at this turn in the river right here. That's in the early 1800s. The big earthquake, 1811, 1812, really didn't affect this area, sunk the land over there. So let's fast forward up past the Civil War. We'll talk a little bit more about that over there. So this in 1887 this land was purchased. And this was kind of a neighborhood back during that time. John McLemore had come and tried to get the railroad to come through here. Was discouraged, went to the gold rush in California before the Civil War, came back. He was like our 4th founder of Memphis. So he was a developer in this area of the Fort Pickering area, and he got annexed in 1868 into Memphis. Now, you get to the 1880s. This was called Jackson Mounds in honor of Andrew Jackson, one of the co-founders of our city. And actually on top of that mound up there was actually a big pavilion, you know, and a dance pavilion. Streetcar line used to come out this way. These 2 mounds you see in the park right here are ceremonial mounds, they're not burial mounds. There used to be 5 other big mounds in here according to Guy Weaver's study. He did an archaeological study of this whole area in preparation for the interstate expanding through here, coming across the bridge and making a flyover here. When you try to get out of here today, you're gonna see how hard it's to get out here, how hard it's to get in and all that. And that's been kind of delayed. But 7 mounds, we only got 2. 1913, the city bought the land, named it De Soto Park. And then in 1924, down there where Auction Park is, the Colonial Dames put a marker there, the big block you see like this, that everybody says the auction slaves off of, that's why it's Auction Park. Well, that was put there in 1924. We weren't auctioning slaves then, okay? But as they said, this is the site where Hernando de Soto first saw the Mississippi River. Well, everybody up and down the Mississippi River was claiming that. And finally in 1939, the Smithsonian did a study of his logbooks and his routes and figured out it's about 20 miles south of here. Right about where the casinos are now. They don't care. But so they took that plaque off that marker, inscribed it on the back of the west side of the marker. You can go read what it says, October 23rd, 1924, Mrs. Grosvenor, Colonial Dames, and brought it down here. So they got 2 miles closer with the same plaque, and then that got stolen. So you'll see a revised marker down here when we go there. And then in the 1990s, well, interstate comes in the middle of the century, and we have the exodus out of downtown. This road right here was used to be Delaware Street, used to go straight through to here and then down. That'll take you down to Jack Carley Causeway and President's Island. And all these streets were named after states like California and Delaware and Pennsylvania and all that. And you used to try to find the Metal Museum and it was on Delaware Drive. Well, where the heck is that? So they changed the name to Metal Museum Drive on the big green sign up there, exit 12C. It makes it real easy to get to the Metal Museum now. That opened in 1979. We'll be over there shortly. 1995, with all the Native American heritage in here with Chickasaw in this park, in the mounds here, the Memphis Park Commission renamed it Chickasaw Heritage Park. That's when it got renamed. And in 2013, this statue here was done through the Urban Art Commission and the Riverfront Development Corporation by Willy Bearden, who's an artist, a sculptor out of Chicago, and it's called Legacies. And this represents the Native American, African American, and Hispanic American heritage of our area. And when you get real closer here with the Native American woman here with her shawl, you'll see a Native American squaw here. You'll see a blues musician here. This is Robert Johnson, trumpet, a conquistador here on this side. If you walk around it, up here on the back right shoulder, there are names of like 19 different Native American villages in this area. And I can't, well, Chickasaw is one of them there, Pontotoc. Some of these names are hard to pronounce, but they're all written right here on her shoulder, right there. So that's the representation. We dedicated this in 2013. Willy Bearden came down here, and we helped them dedicate it. And that's the representation there. And this is one of only three statues in Memphis now we know of that has a female in the statue. The other being Margaret Polk, the Memphis Belle at Overton Park. And Carol Prentice is with her husband Jim Prentice inside the zoo. How about that? And I know deep down some people are working on an Ida B. Wells statue over there in the southern part of downtown, so we'll just stay tuned to that one. Willy Bearden, that's a nice statue. Now let's walk towards the shade. As you walk around and look at that, y'all come up front, just take off, come on. You can kind of see over to our east some homes. There's about 150 homes over there in the French Fort neighborhood, totally isolated by the interstate going around to the north and the east side of them there. And they feel pretty good about that. That's not a high end, but it's a middle class, upper class neighborhood there, black or African American Memphis neighborhood there. Yeah, there's no grocery stores or things like that, but they don't want any of that stuff. They like being alone because they're totally blocked off from the city over there, and nobody comes over and bothers them or anything. What happened over the years, again, there were streets all through here, and when you go before all the bridges came in and over where the Rivermont is, where we'll be later on today, those were all streets with houses. There's a big neighborhood down there, Fort Pickering. And after this all got kind of changed by the expressways and all the transportation, the neighborhoods kind of started going away, but there's always been a Fort Pickering family reunion every July. It was really big in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and of course some of those people started dying off and it got smaller numbers, but this might be a remnant of that, of some former residents coming back. Every year they come back and try to gather up for a Fort Pickering reunion. Let's go down this way. Anybody heard of Fort Prudhomme? So back in the 1600s, I guess, LaSalle was coming down and one of his soldiers named Prudhomme got separated from him. So they had to stop their expedition coming down the river and start looking for the lost soldier, you know. And he finally showed up like a week later. And the legend, so where was he actually lost or found and all that? Well, it was 40 miles north of here, but Randolph that way. But they put this marker over here. And about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, the colonial dame said, let's correct that. And it came to me. I was the Shelby County historian who I was working for the RDC, which was running this property, and said, can we move that marker? I went, I ain't moving no markers. This is before we moved monuments and stuff at Forrest and Davis. And Benny saying, we ain't touching nothing, you know. And but we said, well, you know, that Tennessee Preservation Act actually starts with the French and Indian War or something like that, and this predates that, so it's not covered by that. We're correcting a mistake. We're not doing a political or an activist thing or, you know, anti-Confederate or Civil War, like all these statues coming down and all that. That's a whole different issue. And we said, okay, we're gonna do it. So we actually moved a marker back in 2014 that didn't break the law, didn't upset anybody, and Tipton County came down and we helped load it up with a bobcat. It's a stone about like this, and it's up there at the Randolph Bluff at the site where it should have been originally put. So we corrected history rather than not want to talk about it anymore, I guess is what you're saying. That was over there. This is a stone over here that, if you want to walk up closer to it, go ahead. But it has several little paragraphs, as you can see in the text there, about DeSoto discovering. And we're always very careful when we write our historical marker now, right, Emmy? Because some people say it was the first chapter, local branch of the NAACP. Well, if you say that, you're really absolute, right? So we say it was one of the first. So you can write these things where you're not, you come back later on and find out you were wrong, you know. So if you say one of the, you're always clear. So some of that narrative has been changed there. So DeSoto did make it up into this area, they say, by his log books, just not, this wasn't the first, it was later on. Because if you look at his routing coming in basically where Florida is, he went up through North Carolina. He was trying to get to California. And it just looks like the Family Circus cartoon, you know. I went straight home from school, you know. He probably went 3,000 miles to get 1,000 miles. So he thought probably when he got here and saw all that water and no trees, he probably thought he discovered the Pacific Ocean. Hello, come on in. Who are you? Come here. You with Fort Pickering Reunion?
That's it.
What's your name?
I'm Dolores.
Are you patriotic?
I'm very patriotic.
How would I know
Are
that?
you a veteran?
No, ma'am.
Well, who is? I'd hug their neck.
Well, then I'm a veteran.
No.
You're on camera.
This is our 45th Fort Pickering reunion. Only thing I think you'll ever find in the United States. And we've been having this since 1974. It used to be about 2,000 or 3,000 people.
I remember, yes, ma'am.
And
Tony
now,
Watts.
Well, he was a self-appointed mayor.
That's right.
Fort Pickering,
Oh, Fort
that's
Pickering.
what we call
That's
it.
right.
Yeah, yes, sir. So, but anyway, very few people, but we all love to get together, and at least once a year.
What's your name?
Dolores
Dolores.
Ryan.
You're a veteran, aren't you? No veterans here? She wants to hug a veteran. You're a veteran?
Oh, well,
Come on. So obviously it's gone from 2,000 down to 20. We're doing a walking tour. We're filming about the history of Chickasaw Heritage Park and Metal Museum and the Marine Hospital.
DeSoto Park.
Yeah, well, we've done that in Jacksonville.
DeSoto stood right up there and declared that the Mississippi River.
There you go.
The Battle of DeSoto was fought right here.
There you go.
And they have a cave that we walked it for a while over on that side where the Indians and they used to at the river. That's where they fought, and they come back by here.
Great history lesson here today,
yes,
folks.
That's right. It is. If you want to know anything about this, that was.
What was your name again?
Dolores.
Dolores.
Ryan.
Ryan.
That's right.
We got that. Living history.
Yes, so
resident.
yes,
What part
so
did you live in here? What
well,
street would you remember?
I lived. There was only one street in Fort Pickering named DeSoto.
Okay.
And I lived on DeSoto. All of them were named by the states.
Yes.
And then we
California. Crump was Iowa Avenue. You had Pennsylvania, Delaware.
Delaware, Colorado, California.
And now you have
Indiana.
this is French Fort neighborhood. You got French names. That was built in the 1960s, so they have French names on the
That's
streets,
when
Esplanade and stuff like that.
Our urban renewal came in and took our homes from us, and then so we had some went north, east, some went west, some went north and south, and so that's the reason why that we got together in '74, 4 or 5 of us, and decided we'd have a friends reunion. So then we come up with this, and so it's been going on since then. So, but I live this park run right into DeSoto Street.
Okay.
300 West DeSoto.
Okay.
In there, and that was dividing line was California, I think, or Arkansas, and they lived in West DeSoto. They're east DeSoto there. We were west DeSoto. So, yes, sir. And then we had a little part of town that they would come to Riverside School and Southside. They were called Meacham Town.
Okay.
And their names were Vermont, Utah, Oklahoma, and then if you go on down a little bit across from Riverside Park was a little town called Fort Hurst. And then we had 2 schools out here. And some of them went to Nativity, which some of them, they all come back, and then some went to Riverside. So we were, so if you wanted.
Dolores Ryan, thank you. Take a breath. Thank you so much. We're going to keep on walking, Dolores. Thank you so much for coming in. We got you on film.
I'm just curious, but
We're the good guys.
we're glad.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Can't beat that. You can see the river coming in from the north, sweeping around, going to the west. That's President's Island there. The river used to go around both sides of the island until the 1950s. They built Jack Carley Causeway to make that the industrial port for Memphis because they needed the acreage in the slack water up there for all the barges that were coming. The last steamboat left in 1926, and you just couldn't bring all those barges into Wolf River Harbor. Of course, the city was developing down there. You had to separate the industry on down. And then, of course, the industry went down to the airport and to the expressways after that, too, and out of downtown. And we're kind of reclaiming some of those areas now up in the Wolf River Harbor. Obviously, the South Bluffs Overlook, that was all industrial. It's pretty much residential now. And if you look between 2nd Street and the Wolf River Harbor, north of downtown, north of Green Laws, you're going up, there's starting to be development in there, the old snuff factory, a couple of microbreweries going in there. So Mud Island's full, so you got to build somewhere else, okay? So let's walk up this hill here, those who want to. And if not, and if you want to walk around, we'll meet you right around on the other side at the Metal Museum, and I'll show you that tunnel she was talking about, okay? Come on around, you can see this hollowed out portion here. Again, during the Civil War, they had cannon emplacements here to defend the river. They weren't used in the Battle of Memphis or anything like that. The Battle of Memphis was an on-the-water naval battle. But Fort Pickering was about a 2-mile-long fort, almost all the way down to Vance Street, or Vance Avenue, way down there almost to Beale Street, all along the fort here. Union Fort. You know, we were a sanctuary city during that time. Runaway slaves, freed slaves, a big munitions town, one of the most strategic cities for the Union in the Civil War, the last 3 years of the war. So you can see all the views and the commands you would have from here. You see down here below on the street, the city's come along and topped off some of the trees again. So where you're driving in your car now, you can't actually see out there without being blocked by the trees too. That's always a great sunsets right here, okay? Come on around. Now these little concrete structures here, I've got some pictures from at least up to the late 1960s. There were actually old cannons here and cannonballs stacked up, you know, on them like in a pyramid shape. I don't know when they got taken away. I don't know who took them or when or why, but that's that. Look right in here. When you go up to Randolph, Tennessee, there's actually what's called a magazine inside the embankments up there. It's the only remaining Confederate-built magazine from the Civil War in there. You can walk into, there's 2 big chambers. That's where they stored the nitro and everything, the gunpowder, keep it dry, you know. So this tunnel goes back about 50 feet into here. And every once in a while, somebody will come up with a sledgehammer and knock these out and want to go in there exploring. You know, this is the tunnel Miss Ryan was talking about, you know. So it was an actual brick line tunnel for a magazine for Union storage of supplies, let's say. It's still there. And it gets, you know, I used to be a couple of bricks out here, and you could stick your hand in there with a camera and take the flash picture and see on down. It's just a long tunnel, you know. Everybody make it down okay? We didn't lose anybody, did we? Okay, I see. Okay, Emily's okay. Folks, Carissa Hasong, I've known about 20 years almost now. And were you one of the original directors of Urban Art Commission, or the instigator of all Urban Art Commission? Mm-hmm. When you think about it, and she'll tell you exactly in 20 seconds, how that began like 20 some odd years ago, and what it's meant to our city over the last 20 years and getting more public art in downtown. Tell us that real quick.
Okay, so it was actually started in '96, the Urban Art Commission was, and it was really kind of the vision of Christy Jernigan, who was a philanthropist here in Memphis. She was behind AutoZone Park, one of the kind of movers and shakers getting the park to downtown Memphis. And she just had been traveling a lot, looked around Memphis and thought, we really need to have public art. All these other great cities have great sculptures, they have artists that are really changing the shape of our environment, and she felt that that was something that was missing here in Memphis. And so with AutoZone Park, she made a real commitment to incorporating public art into that project. She also then worked with the library, the Memphis Library Systems, to then incorporate public art into their new large Benjamin Hook Central Library that was underway at that time. And the idea was that with that project, we would really introduce the idea of public art to Memphis, and that it would be sort of our, that's kind of a best practice example of what could be done. And we actually managed to get Percent for Art passed before that project was
Percent
completed.
for Art, what is that, a government?
Percent for Art is how most public art projects are funded throughout the country. It began in Philadelphia in the 60s, I believe. And basically they set aside a certain percentage, usually it's 1% of a construction budget, to use for arts enhancements, to directly contract with an artist or to buy a piece of work for the project. Typically that 1% follows the project. So if you're building a new library, it's a $10 million project, you take 1% of that and you set that aside for artwork. And in reality, it's a very small amount of money when you think about the contingency for a project can be anywhere from 5% to 15%, and that goes into just covering the mistakes that are made on a project. 1% to really enhance
The fancy
it.
word is contingency, you see.
But the 1% to really make a difference, a memorable difference, to really engage the community and create something unique, I think is a very small investment for something that has a huge impact.
So it's not just in downtown, it's all over the city.
It's
too.
all over the
A lot
city.
downtown, you see a lot of art. You'll recognize. Legacies was an urban art
It
fund
was,
over
yes.
here in
And
2013.
I was there for 10 years and we completed over 70 projects around the city of Memphis in that amount of time. I'm not sure how many there are now, but it's
And
well over
there's a
100.
brochure and yeah, and probably on their website, Urban Art Commission. So good. Now this place opened like in 1979 at a former Marine Hospital site. Jim Wallace was the opening director, and then let's just go fast forward up to here we are now, almost 40 years later, right?
It is 40. This is
40
our 40th
years
anniversary.
later, and I always been told that the next closest metal museum is in Japan or France or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But she's going to explain to us the origin of these gates, the property, the great views, the foundry, the
The smithy.
smithy, and changing exhibits and some of the programs that are here, like Blues on the Bluff and Repair Days. You want to come to Repair Days, you know, and other things. So take it away.
So-
I'll stand like this. You can talk
Okay, and so as Jimmy mentioned, this is our 40th anniversary year. The museum was started by the National Ornamental and Miscellaneous Metals Association, which is a members organization for more industrial metal fabricators, so people who are doing large-scale fences, gates, really much more kind of industrial architectural ironwork. And so they had a chapter here in Memphis that was wanting to put together a museum that really celebrated their industry. And they happened to find this location. It was kind of being decommissioned. The government was looking for some group to come in and really keep it as a park-like setting, but to run it as a nonprofit, have it open to the public. And so it really kind of fit the bill that this property would become a museum. And so it was really just a labor of love with a number of the members of NOMA who wanted to make this possible. They found Wally, who had been, he was up in Carbondale at the time. He was studying under Brent Kington, who was a metalsmith who brought a lot of metalsmiths together to study up at Southern Illinois University. And of course, Jim Wallace was one of them. And during his time doing his graduate studies there, he took a year off to organize a blacksmithing conference and a very important exhibition that received a National Endowment for the Arts grant, and also traveled to the Renwick Gallery in DC. And it was quite a big deal, and I think he thought, wow, I've got this down. I can certainly go to Memphis and start a museum and do these exhibitions. And he got down here and the buildings were empty and full of leaves, and just everything was kind of a mess. And he really built this museum from the ground up. Every single gallery was renovated by Wally and just a handful of volunteers. And over time, he expanded the mission. So in the beginning, the mission was really just architectural ironwork, and he knew that he wasn't going to be able to keep an audience engaged with that. People weren't going to come back to just see the same fences and furnaces and things. So he began to expand that to include all metals. And so we show everything from jewelry to sculpture, hollowware, enamel work. So it's really a wide range of things that you'll find in our collection and in our exhibitions.
Like explain some of the gate here.
So the gate, as Wally explained, that we're the metal museum, yet the gate that we had here was just a very plain gate that matched the ironwork along the fence line here. And that really wasn't the proper vision or message for a metal museum, to have a very kind of boring gate.
Yeah.
So for the 10th anniversary of the museum, they set about building these gates. They were designed by Richard Quinnell, who is a British blacksmith. He wanted to go outside of the country so that he wasn't accused of choosing favorites among his friends. But what Richard did was he created a design that would then incorporate that. He created a design that metalsmiths from around the world could participate in. And so what you see here are these S scrolls, which is a very common form that you use in blacksmithing. Part of the reason that it's used so often is that you can kind of adjust it on site. So if your measurements aren't perfect, you can move it a little bit and kind of get it so it's square and fits the spaces properly. And that's why it's a form that's used. And so they basically, back in the days with fax machines, sent faxes all across the world with specifications for the scrolls, and then all of those artists who participated in creating the scrolls were invited to create these rosettes. And so they're all very different, but they come together to form a unified piece. We still have a few spots left, and occasionally we add a few.
And then they match too, like it's a two. This is the same artist right here, right?
Yeah, there are some that match. There's a cup and a saucer that go together. There's breakfast and dinner.
Breakfast and dinner. And it looks like the names on some of the artists too, right?
Some did put their names on there, and then the piece itself was assembled here at the museum and then installed on Mother's Day for our 10th anniversary.
Okay. Let's walk up into the shade this way, folks, and learn a bit more about the grounds and look around. Some of the artwork on the grounds too. So we're into the grounds here. And again, it was a federally occupied, 1884 I think it was, the Marine Hospital was down in like Napoleon, Arkansas, the big flood, it got kind of wiped out. So they came up closer to Memphis, but the Memphians didn't want, after the yellow fever epidemics, they didn't want any more sick people coming into Memphis. They kind of put it on the outside of the city out here on this high bluff. Main population is down that way. I believe this building right here is an original building, the white building, right? And then 1883 there. And then right around the other side of the brick building here will be another building. It was moved like 100 feet in the 1930s when they built these other buildings here for World War II at the end of the 1930s as a Marine hospital. Of course, the Veterans Hospital. And of course, the first Marine hospital here was for industrial workers up and down the Mississippi River, to have not fighting Marines, but mariners, let's say. Okay, I made one buddy, ding. Well, there you go, a merchant marine or whatever. So look at these trees. Look at this. I mean, we're here. It's probably 10 degrees cooler right here than it is over there, you know. But you can see along the grounds here various pieces of art. They didn't make the cornstalk fence here. That came out of the Sears catalog, right? Something like that.
Actually, we did a repair on the original one that's in New Orleans.
Okay.
So that is a
replica
casting of it.
That's a casting. If you've seen the cornstalk fence in New Orleans, you could buy those out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog, or you could buy a house out of a Sears. And you got some of these other smaller buildings. Want to explain these two buildings here?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the founding director, Jim Wallace, was an artist who's a blacksmith. He still is. And so when he came here, he really didn't have a whole lot of support. The funding from the founding organization was not flowing in, and he really needed to kind of subsidize what he was doing by making work. And so he built a blacksmith shop here, and he also began an apprenticeship program where he had basically free labor to help him in the museum and in the shop. That program is continued today. It's more formalized, and they do get paid. The apprentices live here on the grounds, and they work in the shop, both in the blacksmith shop and the foundry. It's a 2-year program. So we have 2 people in the blacksmith shop and 1 person in the foundry, and it's something that you really can't find elsewhere, that opportunity to really kind of learn the business side of running a shop, but also have that access to teaching classes, to the museum, to the networking, and to all of the other programs that we do. But at any rate, he started the blacksmith shop as really a way to help him support his family and support the museum. And it's become a very integral part of what we do. We teach a lot of different classes, workshops. We do commissions. We've done public art pieces. That's how I first got to
Repaired
know.
broken historical markers. When people live with cars and mowers, we bring them down here to get repaired, put back on the pole.
We have one almost every year.
Yeah.
And that's part
Modern
of
movie making in Memphis was the last one there at the arcade restaurant, you know.
But Repair Days is our big annual fundraiser. It takes place the 3rd weekend in October. It's October 17th through 20th this year. It is a kind of big, crazy event that I've said if we didn't organize it, the metalsmiths would still show up and make it happen. But we have about 100 metalsmiths who come from across the country, as far away as California and Maine, Florida. They come every year. Some of them camp on the grounds, they stay with friends, and they basically give their time to fix broken items that people bring in to be repaired. And all of the proceeds benefit the museum. We also have a big dinner and auction. And the family fun day, we do an iron pour. There are lots of hands-on activities, and it's just a big kind of metalsmithing reunion that we do every year.
Food trucks?
We don't have food trucks, no. But it's a great event, and we have fixed just about anything you can imagine. People have brought in an aluminum boat that needed to be patched on the bottom. We've done a lot of crazy. I mean,
historical markers.
we've had people bring in a silver platter that was crushed in a tornado, and it was something that had sentimental value to the owner. They actually had lost their brother in that tornado, and we had a team of artists who made it look brought it almost back to perfect condition.
Let's walk quickly out to the gazebo over here. Look at the boat's going a lot slower too. Come forward to the gazebo here. You get a great view of the river. You see the Island Queen out there on this 2:30 sightseeing cruise. Right below us is Economy Boat Store. Right to the south of that is Valero Refinery. And people get married here, don't they?
They do.
Great, go ahead, Carissa.
The gazebo is probably one of our most popular spots for people just coming, having lunch, enjoying the sunset. It is a beautiful sunset from here. We do have a lot of people who get married in the gazebo, and it's really a beautiful place for evening events. Pretty special.
And the tents put up for parties, corporate rentals, weddings, Blues on the Bluff.
Mainly weddings, but we do have the tent here because we don't have interior space
heating room
for events.
Annually, the WEVL, the
They do
volunteer
Blues on the
station,
Bluff.
Blues on the Bluff, great show. Willie's probably produced that or something, or played in it, or no. We gotta get them corrected on that then, don't we, Willie?
Maybe.
Okay. Look at aren't these beautiful grounds? You always been driving around out there. Then you come back behind these buildings and look at these shaded grounds, and then the landscaping and the fountain over here, the bushes, the flowers.
And just to give you a little
President?
bit of history about the buildings, the main museum building was actually the nurses' dormitory. So if you go in there, you'll see some odd things that just have to do with the way that the building was originally laid out. The duplex where our artists lived was the junior officers' quarters. And then, of course, the library building, the white 2-story building, was one of the original buildings here on this site. It was built in 1883, and the hospital opened in 1884. One little interesting kind of fact about this concrete pad out here was that it was originally a tennis court. So obviously, if your ball went the wrong way, it wasn't coming back. But at one point when the bluff failed here and we had to do this addition, we almost lost the gazebo. They re-poured that court, but for a long time you could still see that it was clearly a tennis court. You can still see the striping on it and everything.
So grounds are free, right? Come here and come out, bring a lunch out here and walk the grounds, and then there's changing exhibits in the buildings various times.
There's changing exhibits.
And a gift shop.
There's a gift
Christmas
shop.
gifts.
But yes,
Birthday
changing
gifts.
exhibitions in the museum building. Right now we have 40 Under 40, which is a collection of 40 artists who are under 40 years old, but it's looking at the future of metalsmithing, and so really looking at who's going to be making that future impact on the field. And then in the white building we have a permanent collection, and so you're able to see everything from locks and keys, a knife collection, jewelry, our former master metalsmiths. So it's a great kind of cross-section of metalworking that's on display there. And then on the first floor, we have kind of our maker space where we're able to teach hands-on workshops. We do classes for kids as young as 3 years old, and we do a variety of things from a kind of a drop-in hands-on activity you can do, making a copper bracelet or a name tag or gold leafing something, all the way up to a kind of master's classes where they're a week-long workshop that we do for professional artists.
Let's swing by the foundry now here real quick. Just stick a toe in there. You can see some of the graphic text panels here. Speaking about this, hello.
So we've got it looks like we've got a couple people here right now for our open studio. So if you're a supporting friend member, you can come in and use our tools and equipment.
Okay. Doesn't that look like fun?
I'll bet I get used to it.
Where's Saltmarsh today?
She's here. I bet she's in the office.
Okay. It's okay.
You want me to go?
No.
They must get used to the heat in here.
Oh, well, yes. I'm sure they do.
I did those films.
Oh, Willie, by the way, did these films up here you see on the panel. Also at the Cotton Museum. Gosh, some of the Memphis Rock and Soul videos. One, the Tupelo Museum, the Elvis Museum there. Gateway Museum in Tunica. Before we wrap up here, metalmuseum.org, right?
Correct.
774-6380.
Very
That's the
good.
number. Here. Very good. Are
We're Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sunday noon to 5. It's $6 for adults, $5 for seniors, and $4 for students. We do have a lot of free days. We are actually free every Thursday for Tennessee residents, but we do have a lot of family fun days that are also free days.
you got things like Wet Thursdays,
Wet Thursday,
WHET.
although
Thursday.
it often rains, but that's an event where we stay open late. We have a food truck, music, activities. It's just kind of a great way to engage people in a different way here at the museum, and to also share the beautiful sunsets.
See how easy it is to get here too. Exit 12C, Metal Museum Drive, big green sign. Used to be Delaware Drive or California or something, the sign,
California.
and you couldn't figure out where the Metal Museum was. What? So that's a real good stroke there. Let's see. Are you married?
Yes, I am married.
Who to who? Can we
David
talk? Can we
Lusk.
talk about him? Real quick, a little PSA for David Lusk.
And my husband owns David Lusk Gallery. It's on Tillman. It's a beautiful space. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend visiting it. He's done a great job.
And she know I wasn't proposing to her too, by the way. Because 33 years ago,
33 years ago.
David was at Southwestern, a marketing student who interned at Mud Island River Park. And I was general manager. That's where I met David Lusk a long time ago. See, my long arms go out real far. And then I didn't get to meet her till like 20 years ago, though. So he got there before me. So good. David Lusk. But brings a lot, it does a lot for art. Obviously, y'all been to the openings and everything, galleries. Yeah, so we're glad to have David and Carissa on the art and metals scene, nice couple. And thank you for doing this for us today. And come back, y'all come back, you know, and see you. And of
just-
course, gift shop over here as well. Got to push that.
And I wanted to add, we do demonstrations on the weekends. We do a 1 o'clock forging demonstration and a 1:30 casting demonstration. We do that every Saturday and Sunday, so it's a kind of a great time to plan your visit when you come.
Living history right here. Be nice to Carissa. All right, we're going to take a walk over here, then head on out to Crump. This portion of the property was built in the 1930s in preparation for World War II. Veterans Hospital, then it was decommissioned in the 60s when the big Veterans Hospital was built downtown. And it was used as like Army Reserve on weekends up through the Gulf Wars, through the 1990s. Been vacant since that time, middle of the 1990s. Lauren Cruz bought it, the property, about 20 years ago, maybe 16 years ago. He's had this dream of having condos here and other things going on, you know, other developments around the area. It's kind of, he also owned that old hotel that sat over there and started rotting out all the time and was a big eyesore when you came to the city. He finally tore it down. You know, so he said, get that thing torn down. He said it had good bones and was going to try to make residents there, but that didn't happen. So now they've gotten, it's about an $18 million project. It'll take about one more year to complete this. They just started this year. 71 residential properties in there, I think condos and apartments both. Beautiful grounds. Again, yeah, there's not a grocery store right there or a gas station, but when I lived downtown back in the 80s, I just got my car and went to West Memphis. It took 5 minutes to go boom right there. You know, it's quicker to get to West Memphis than it was to Cecil's on Union, you know, with all the traffic lights and everything. So you're not too far away from any services like in downtown. A little bit out of the core of downtown. Sometimes that can be nicest too with all the events and traffic and things like that going on. So this will be a new hotspot. They say 60% of the properties here will have river views. I haven't figured the math out on that yet. But and then when we're going around, there's another support building on the side out there. And then back behind, when you drive out, you'll notice a smaller building that has like a porch, a wraparound porch on it. That was the nurses' quarter that was moved 100 feet from over here back there to build this building in here like this. So that was back in the 1930s. That's kind of weird. So that's the other 1883 building that is on this property, these two properties. Lauren Cruz, C-R-E-W-S. You can just probably Google up this property and see more information about that.
They're all rentals.
All rentals, is that what it is? Okay, well there we go, all rentals. There was a story in the Daily News about it this past week too. I think I got it in my car somewhere. So let's hop in our cars here real quick. Go to the Crump Park parking lot rather than walk over, walk back. I think it'd be better for everybody. Of course, we've got three bridges over here. It's hard to see from this angle. The center bridge was built in 1892. The northernmost bridge, that's the Harahan Bridge, 1916 and 1917, and then the southernmost bridge, the Memphis and Arkansas Bridge in 1949, and that's what kind of disrupted this neighborhood that used to be here. These were 3 or 4 streets in here with houses on them, not like those, but cottages and stuff like that, like you see from the 1920s and 30s. So this was all residential through here, no hotels. Earl's Hot Biscuits, you might remember that from the 60s and 70s. K Barbecue on down, you know. Okay, there's third. So when the bridges came in, it really disrupted the neighborhood flow. I think they wanted to name the bridge for Crump, but he didn't want them to do that, you know, so they named this little park here for Crump. You've heard of Crump, right? Yep. So it's called Crump Park. In fact, you can see right here, the brown grass going around up to the middle 1980s. You could actually drive your car. There's a gravel drive right there and a little circle at the end right here. You could circle back around and come back out. You see, Super 8 came later on. I think it used to be back in the 80s, there was a restaurant up there. You come down here for lunch and have a river view of the restaurant up there. This gets a lot of weekly visitors here. People working on the highway department, stuff like that, come in, stay here. When there's festivals downtown, it's always full. I bet they have a real good occupancy rate right here. For the hotel. Now we're going to walk out to the magnolia tree over here. This is the best tree in downtown Memphis, okay? Come on over and see this. Watch out for any anthills, by the way.
Yeah, do not stand on Chinkapin.
This is a chinkapin oak tree, according to Mitch Harrison. Chinkapin. About 5 years ago, I came down there with some employees of the Hyde Foundation. Pitt Hyde came, Barbara did, I was talking, I turned my back, and Barbara was about halfway up that tree. I mean, it's just like a staircase here. You know, we've actually done school groups in here where I talk here and they sit on the tree limbs, you know. This is my favorite tree all in downtown Memphis. I think it's called a Jimmy Ogle magnolia tree is what the species is or whatever. But just look, and like if you go to Somerville, Tennessee and go back 2 blocks south of the square, there's a place, an old house there called Two Magnolias. And right out in the front lawn, the trees, I mean, you've seen some of those magnolias before, they just come down, you cannot see anything. And you go inside there, you know, and you're just like, wow.
How old is this?
I think we've dated it back to the early 1900s. I'm trying to think right now. Because there have been some aerial photos that you could see it in. I just can't remember the exact year. Again, there were residential streets in here and stuff like that. But look at the roots, and again, if you look at some of the magnolia trees around, how they get sweeping out like this. My favorite tree. Now, my favorite other tree in downtown Memphis is in that alley below where we get to the Arcade Restaurant, go up G.E. Patterson about half a block, and then go down the alley, I guess past St. Paul, and there's a huge old willow tree there. Gorgeous willow tree. And there's not a name for that alley yet either, by the way. Now, usually when we started our bridge walks, before we had the Big River crossing, the preview, we would do the talk right here, because when you go up there, it's too loud, because of all the traffic and everything to talk into a group. And what this was Highway 70 that came from San Diego, 1927. The Broadway of America is an association promoting driving across the country in a car on a paved highway. You know, somebody had to learn how to do that. My grandparents had to learn how to do that, you know. And of course, Baron Collier from Memphis was the man that invented the white and yellow lines in the highway. Bet you didn't know that. Well, you did if you were on the last tour I did, because I talked about it then, but I just learned that this year. He dropped out of Market Street School. Just an incredible story. Baron Collier, the father of modern streetcar advertising, was his big claim to fame. So we're going to walk up this slope here. Walk maybe just far enough out to get out over the water. Not too far, maybe 100 feet. Real quick, then walk back. We're not going to try to do any chalking up here. I just want you to get the view. 7-foot wide walkway. In fact, there's not a fence. When we walk up to the top, guess what? You can walk right out into the expressway. There's not a fence for the first 50 feet that blocks you from walking into the expressway. Boom. That's where I'm going to stand and say, don't do that. And then when you get on the actual bridge itself, the abutment's only 2 feet tall. So don't be looking out there, sitting on it, clowning at it, waving at trucks coming by, because they're coming by 50, 70 miles an hour, okay? So be safe. And you'll hear it, and a bridge will vibrate with you too. It's supposed to do that. It's not an earthquake. So then you're going to go over to Big River Crossing and see what the value is of a 10-foot wide dedicated bicycle and pedestrian path is, and why that's such a great project for our city, okay? This takes you down into the delta, into the shoulder of the expressway. And people have been killed doing that. So we just want to walk up here just for a second. You'll see the dedication inscriptions up there. Memphis and Arkansas Bridge, 1949. Who was the mayor? Who was the governors? All that stuff's on there. So let's go this way here, okay? Because this is from 1995, and it's one of our lost pieces. It'd probably be a good story behind this from the Honest Monument Company, our favorite monument company besides Crone and Rock of Ages, Memphis Park Commission, officiated by Commission Against Senseless Killings. This is 1995. The bushes have grown up over it, so I cut them all back. You see that. Now let's go up on the bridge. Was a mayor of Memphis in the 1940s. All okay? Some people don't like heights. So the bridge goes about a half a mile across the river, then about another half a mile across the delta before there's embankments that support it. The first 14 years for the Harahan Bridge, there's actually a viaduct, let's say, a wooden viaduct that took you about 2 miles to get out to the, where they had that all filled in. That's the floodplain on the other side. That's the Arkansas floodplain. There's always be flooded, no buildings or anything like that. Again, if you takes you about a mile to get over there, and all you're gonna do is touch some Arkansas mud. If that's exciting, go ahead and do it. I got asked a question, and we always had to deal with it with the riverboats because we were always being called out to help with searches. How many people jump off a bridge? Well, in 1892, on May 10th, I can tell you Doc Hotham jumped off the bridge. He's the first known recording person to jump off the bridge. And that was at the dedication of the Frisco Bridge. He was an Olympic diver, and it was a ceremonial dive. And Doc Hotham, H-O-T-T-U-M. There used to be a sidewalk plaque on the wall in November 6th Alley about him, but that building's the one that fell down on Madison and blocked Madison for about 2 months, and nobody could seem to make any moves on it, you know. And his plaque got lost in that. But if you look up the name Doc Hotham, he set some swimming records across the river. I mean, there's always been swim. If you ever talk to Henry Turley or Ward Archer Jr., call them out, okay? They brag about the year they swam across the Mississippi River. Well, what year do you think it was? 1988, when the river's down at minus 10.7. It's about 300 yards wide. Normally it's 3/4 of a mile wide, and by the time you get in up there, the current takes you down about a mile. You're about to die. So when they brag about it, you call them out, okay? You call them out. They did swim across the river. And I figured out next time the river gets down to about -6 or -7, I might try that, because it will only be about half as wide as it is now, you see. It really expands. We had a situation in 1996. I was at Memphis Queen Line down there, and this policeman comes down, saying, "Can you help us go out here? We just had a police chase. The state troopers from Arkansas chased somebody up the highway across the bridge. They got out of the car, and they threw a suitcase out into the river. They knew it was drugs, and he threw it out on the Arkansas side, and they saw it snagged up on the rock dike down there. They arrested the people. Search me, I got nothing. You know, they arrested them, they saw it, they witnessed it. They brought them around to the Tennessee side. We went out there, got the suitcase with them. Yeah, it was pot in there. First time I ever saw pot, I guess. You know. The moral of that story is, if you're gonna jump off the bridge, okay, they have those rock dikes out there on the Arkansas side, which causes every gallon of water has a teaspoon of mud, and that makes the siltation fill in. So the Arkansas side is not as deep as the Tennessee side. So sometimes you'll see the sand over there all the way out to those docks. That's at 15 feet. And there'll be, so if you jumped off the bridge there, well, here's what I told the people. So if you're gonna jump off the bridge to kill yourself, jump off on the Tennessee side, because if you change your mind on the way down, you might hit and bob back up. But if you jump off on the Arkansas side, you're gonna break your neck, because it's only about 5 feet deep. You know what I mean? So don't jump off on that side. That's the moral of that story we learned on that. So now, 2 years ago, I'm doing the commentary on the Island Queen, and we're coming down river. Here we go below the lower 3 bridges, and we see a bunch of boats out here and everything. We get underneath there, and the captain tells us on the radio, somebody's gonna jump off the bridge. So I'm here giving my great commentary, talking, and they see all these boats, and somebody notices that. Where does all the passengers on the boat go? With their cell phones, right? They're gonna watch this guy jump off the bridge. They're gonna get this. So we had to get back up on the other side of the bridge so that wouldn't distract from the commentary. The guy did not jump. By the time we got back in port, they had talked him off. So we say, I can remember them when I was at Mud Island bringing bodies up. They had fished out of the water, been in the water a week, smelled, no, it's just gross, okay? Bloated, no eyes, all this stuff. So if you jump off that bridge, you don't have much of a chance, let's put it that way, no matter how good you are. If you accidentally fall off, like people used to walk out on the bridges, and you'll hit that water, and then they might find you in Tunica. You know, they might find you 10 miles down, 20 miles down. They won't find your body for several days. You know, then you'll find you'll surface up, and you've been eaten on by fish and turtles and things like that too. You know, so it's not a pleasant thing. You don't really see. You know, probably once every 5 years, somebody jumps off a roof in downtown Memphis somewhere. You don't see that publicized because you get the copycat people. You don't want the attention. The news media kind of tries to downplay that as much as possible when they can, because you just don't want all the copycat stuff going on. So it's a horrible thing. but it does happen. There was at least one promotional dive when we opened the Frisco Bridge in 1892. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
More than you wanted to know, wasn't it? Oh, it happens in every city. It happens everywhere. Yeah, yeah. It's just, again, it's just one of those things you just don't publicize that much. You know, okay, fine, they jumped off a bridge. Okay. You know. Any questions? Any questions? Any bad questions? You're the third person to ask me that now. Haven't I answered that enough? I think about 100 years old, somewhere 80 to 100 years old. We've tried to spot it on old pictures. You know, it's grown and grown and grown when the houses are in here and everything. We kind of just can't get real sure in some of those old aerial photographs that they have, like on the library web. If you want to go on the library website and find an aerial photo of downtown Memphis and scan over to it, then once you enlarge and enlarge and enlarge, it kind of pixelates even more and more and more. So it's kind of hard to do. But you can, somebody could probably, a good arborist could come and probably give us a better estimate without cutting it down to count the rings, you know. But it is substantial. Look at the base of that thing is substantially big. There, it might be 2 trees over there, you know. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to get in our cars and drive over to the Big River crossing. So this is really difficult to do here. When you come up, you got to get out onto the interstate. All this traffic, this is what they want to do. See, 90% of this traffic right now is not going to Memphis. It's going to Mississippi, Alabama, the Gulf Coast, that way. It is the Interstate 55. So what they're going to try to do is do the flyover out there at summer. All that traffic flies over and around and down into 55. And then Riverside Drive comes under. There'll be a drive underneath it. Austin right here will come out through Riverside Drive. So we'll come underneath to get in there. There'll be a roundabout or something over there. For the local traffic, that's about 10%. And Crump Avenue too, you see. So they're trying to get this traffic up and over so this can be accessible. Right now, you cannot walk underneath the bridges since 9/11. Back in 1980, where all that kudzu is over there, we had a grant. I was with the Park Commission. We cut the pathway there. You'll see that slope going down and going underneath. And before 9/11, you could walk underneath, but I'm sure some of y'all have. And you probably could do it now and get away with it. But Homeland Security, when you're up in this area, they got cameras up there. You know, they'll stop you. And what do you do? They'll keep you for a while. They'll get your license, you know. They'll scare you not to do it again. So these are very important bridges for our infrastructure in the nation. 50,000 vehicles a day come across this bridge, 50,000 on the I-40 bridge up there. And that's one of the problems in trying to do this construction is they want to shut this bridge down entirely to do the construction for about a year. Can you imagine if this is one wreck on this bridge, it screws up traffic for about half a day, you know? Imagine it being closed for a year and putting 100,000 vehicles on the I-40 bridge. What a traffic nightmare that'd be. They didn't have a wreck there, you see. The 2 train bridges, there's 3 total railroad lines. They are very active, you know. We're one of 3 cities in America to have all 5 Class 1 freight rail operators in our river, railways, roadways, runways network here. That's a big player as well, our rails. So this is a very strategic area of the country right here. And we ought to be thankful for it. Transportation, distribution, logistics is our #1 employer in Memphis. Think about that.